Nobody ever heard of this before. This is a coup. They took him. They said, even though you got 14 million votes, you're out. And he said, I'm not going out.
But you're saying that's what they're kind of doing with the court as well?
No, what they're doing is they're keeping, they took him out. He was losing badly. They took him out. He wants something to say. He's sitting there with nothing to do, nobody to talk to. They threw him out. This was a coup, the first one, of the president of the United States.
Donald Trump is continuing to complain that he now has to run against presumptive Democratic nominee Kamala Harris as opposed to Joe Biden. And I don't blame him for complaining. I mean, Kamala Harris is, of course, a lot more competitive than Joe Biden is. However, while enthusiasm among Democratic voters seems to have exploded following Biden's departure from the general election, Nate Silver makes clear that his replacement, Harris, is still an underdog in this race. So let's break it down based on his forecast model. He claims that, well, according to that model, Trump has a 61.3% probability of winning the Electoral College, whereas Harris has a 38.1% probability. So we all know that the Electoral College is what determines who the winner of the race is. When you look at the popular vote, Harris performs much better. So let's take a look at that. So, oh, by the way, before we get to that, I should also note that when Silver unveiled the model last month, it also found that Trump had a 65.7% chance of winning the Electoral College, while President Joe Biden had just 33.7% chance. I think it's important to do that comparison between Biden and Harris to understand, while Harris is still the underdog, she's still performing a lot better than Biden did, and she has some room to grow. So we'll wait and see what happens between now and November. Now let's just quickly go to the popular vote, which does not determine who the winner will be, but in this area, obviously Harris does a lot better. So she has a 53.5% probability of winning the popular vote, whereas Trump has a 46.5% probability. Trump is also performing really well in some of these battleground states, including Georgia and Michigan. But Kamala Harris has made some gains in battleground states compared to how Biden was performing, namely in Pennsylvania, for example. And so I'm curious what you think about this, Cenk, because we're not trying to rain on anyone's parade. I know there is legitimate excitement among the Democratic electorate, but I think it's also important to be sober-minded about where this race currently is.
Well, hey, don't scroll away. Come back. Because before the video continues, we just want to urge you to lend your support to TYT. You power our honest reporting. You do it at tyt.com/team, and we love you for it. First of all, I'm not going to appease anyone who wants rah, rah, rah. We're going to stick to the reality and facts no matter what. So like if you want me to say like, oh no, it's already locked up, we have a 90% chance of winning, don't worry, MSNBC exists. They'll lie to you all day long. Okay, so now I agree and disagree with Nate for a couple of what I think is interesting reasons. So first of all, I agree with him that is the current snapshot of the race. That is accurate. But there's something, and by the way, notice that almost overnight, we pick up 5 huge points when Kamala Harris replaces Joe Biden. So already a huge bump even in Nate Silver's analysis, okay? But I think that the problem with his model, and I think he might acknowledge this, not necessarily as a problem, but as a way of looking at his model, which is that it is a snapshot. It doesn't tell you what's going to happen 4 months from now. It tells you what the current state of the race is. So if you think Kamala Harris is already in the lead or definitely going to win, that's not true. Nate is right about that, okay? But what it doesn't take into account is momentum. It doesn't take into account which direction necessarily the campaign is going and how things are going to wind up. So and Nate was just as adamant as anyone that Joe Biden was not the right candidate based on the numbers that he saw. But you see in that analysis, before he left, he was at 33.7% chance of winning. So what I've always told you is I think that he actually had a near zero chance of winning.
Right.
And it turned out that even his closest advisors a couple of days before he dropped out said near zero. After he dropped out, MSNBC hosts started saying near zero, because at the end of the day, that number is going to keep moving and it's not going to be the same. And so Biden had a downward trajectory, and he kept going further and further and further down. And so the natural conclusion to that was that he had almost no chance of recovery. And if you're sitting at 33 and you're not trending upwards, then in effect, your chances of winning are nothing, okay?
I agree.
So now when you look at Kamala Harris, we have the exact opposite situation. She's trending upwards. So the fact that she's not leading currently does not bother me. To me, she is, by getting to a point where she's leading by 4 in Pennsylvania. Now it's just one poll, there's gotta be a million more, right? But as far as how the race looks now, I would say that I have it at even, or even Kamala Harris is a slight favorite, 52,
really?
55% chance,
Interesting,
yes.
okay.
Yeah, and I don't mean, again, I don't mean the snapshot. Nate's right about the numbers, right?
Right.
But in terms of where do I think it's going to wind up 4 months from now? Do I know for sure? Of course not, otherwise I'd tell you 100%, right? And I'm not shy about it, as you guys know. But right now, it is definitely trending in her direction. She's, in my opinion, very likely to take the lead. But as I've told you many times, roller coaster, that she might lose the lead. It might go back and forth a couple times because Trump is not an unsavvy campaigner, and the Republicans are good at digging, finding up nonsense and making a giant federal case out of it. I'd be surprised if they couldn't do that pretty effectively a couple of times at least against Kamala Harris.
Well, that's what I'm thinking about, right? As we proceed forward with this general election, I can't help but think about how the point you're making really does cut both ways. For the time being, Kamala Harris is trending upward, right? She's doing well, but it's only been a little over a week. And to be quite honest with you, there really hasn't been much discussion or any discussion about policy. Like I don't know what Kamala
But there might never be.
Okay, but I think that's a problem.
But neither side wants to have a conversation about policy because the Democrats are going to mainly deliver for the donors, and Trump is going to mainly deliver for the donors and himself. So they don't really want to talk. The only policy that Trump's going to want to talk about is immigration, right? Because he thinks that's a losing issue for them.
I think both of them need to talk about that. I think Kamala Harris needs to explain what her vision for immigration policy is going to be, or is.
That would be nice. And to be fair to Kamala Harris, she just became the presidential candidate. Look, if I'm the vice president for 3.5 years, trust me, I would have 20 policies ready to go that I've been dying to do. But that's not how most politicians are. So she's now going to have to come up with her own ideas and platform as opposed to supporting Joe Biden's. And that's going to take her a little bit of time. But largely, these politicians would love to avoid policy. So she's gonna, and in terms of her politics, she's gonna want to talk about abortion more, right? Because they think those are the winning issues for the two sides. So they'll only focus on the policies where they think they have an advantage, and whether they're actually gonna do anything about it or not, right? Because Biden's current policies on immigration are actually very similar to Donald Trump's former policies on immigration. And honestly, Kamala Harris isn't going to be able to do anything other than stop the bleeding on abortion. Like, okay, she would be able to block a national law, but the Republicans would be very unlikely to be able to pass a national law. She can't really do anything about the red states. So, and is she really gonna fight hard to get a filibuster-proof majority? Very unlikely. So the policy issues that they could do something about, they'll almost never talk about. And if I'm being honest, well, that's all we ever do is be honest with you guys. And they largely don't care about. They're politicians.
No, I get that the politicians don't care. I guess I have a little bit of a problem with the electorate not really caring. I have a problem with the electorate not having higher standards and simply voting based on vibes. And then more importantly, shaming others for disagreeing with them politically because they don't agree with voting based on vibes. Like the presidential elections have become an absolute joke where talk about policy is now like not part of the whole process. And I don't know, I have an issue with that. But let's get back to Trump's interview with Laura Ingraham, because I thought it was kind of funny how Laura Ingraham wanted to make a point about how you don't have to worry about Kamala, you're doing really well. Now the poll that she's about to present to Donald Trump in the context of this clip is a little outdated. And when I say outdated, the poll was done before Biden's disastrous debate performance. Let's take a look.
The Real Clear Politics average shows you up at about 1.75%, 7% over her. But before the debate, Biden was 1.1 5 points behind. So you've actually slightly grown your lead on the national poll. So how do you keep Republicans positive and not buying into kind of the negative publicity that they're saying?
I think she's a worse candidate than him. She's far more radical left. She is younger. I mean, she's 60 years old. A lot of people, I didn't realize she was 60. I thought she was a little younger, but she's 60. She is talking a big game, but her game is pretty bad. I mean, she was the border czar. She's trying to pretend that she wasn't.
Kamala Harris looks damn good, okay? Like, I didn't know she was 60, mostly because I don't care. Like, I don't care about her age. I know that she's much younger than both Biden and Trump. But if Harris isn't a threat and isn't a more competitive candidate that compared to Joe Biden, then why are you complaining about the alleged coup on Joe Biden?
Yeah, of course.
Like,
no. As we showed you earlier in the show, JD Vance talked to donors in private and said, yeah, it was a gut punch. We thought we had Joe Biden beat, and they're now very worried that they do not have Kamala Harris beat, and they should be worried. The national polls, let me just explain, she's up 3.5 now, but as I've told you a million times when we had to get Joe Biden on the race, the Democrat has to win by 4.5 to 5 nationally to win the Electoral College. That's why she's still trailing. If the election were held today, she would lose. So be clear-eyed about that. She's still got to make up ground. But that deceptive poll that Anna pointed out, that it was pre the debate that's classic Fox News.
I know, it's amazing. But why give Trump unnecessary confidence? You get what I'm saying?
No, they're trying to just encourage their own audience. Don't give up.
Okay, all right.
Okay, because now we've got the old candidate and we look like we're in a civil war and disastrous shape and we're slipping away. No, we actually went up. Like, that's classic Fox News to get their guys excited. Last thing is, right there, boom, he measures the border. Of course, that's his one go-to thing. He measured age because he just is going to old talking points about Biden. They still haven't caught up, which is amazing to me. And then finally, radical left. And unfortunately, what Anna's saying about some portions of the left helps them make that point, because they're like, oh, we don't want to hear about her policies that aren't progressive. She's just the most progressive person in the world. Well, that helps Donald Trump with his attack on how she's radical left. It's not backed up by any facts.
Right.
She's not within miles or planets of radical left or even progressive. So stop saying things that aren't true, especially because they wind up being counterproductive in this case. I wish she was a strong progressive populist, but she ain't. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.